Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. Hey, Brian, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Ani.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for those of you who are in our listening area in the United States, today is the Thanksgiving Day, Thanksgiving celebration. And for those of you who are not U.S. residents, then we're thankful that you're here joining us. And you may not be celebrating a specific thankful holiday today, but perhaps in your country, in your culture, there's a day in the year where you specifically take an opportunity to practice gratitude and thankfulness. We invite you to bring that spirit of energy here today.
Thanksgiving is our favorite holiday, and it's the holiday that at our house is the gathering holiday for our family. And so it's a super special time, and it really does bring up that gratitude, those gratitude feelings.
Yeah, interesting. And our holiday, the way we celebrate with our family, for me, it's one of the reasons it feels so special to me. And so I'm so grateful for it is because it does feed like some of my core values, like what are really important to me. Well, food, yes, but actually more importantly, the how everybody contributes. It's really a team effort on Thanksgiving for us. So it's not just everybody brings a dish, but our family gets together really for like 5 days. Our extended family gets together for 5 days. And over that 5 days, we put the docks away for the winter and cover things up and put things away, get prepared for the snow to start flying. It's a whole kind of a transition period, and everybody participates in doing it.
And part of the reason I think for that nature is because it happens at your parents' house, which is this very special property. And so it's we're gathering. Yeah, we always gather at the place, and the place holds us. And then, the family won't gather again until we come to the place again in the summer when we're bringing out the docks and
exactly
that kind of thing. So it's truly very special.
Yeah. So it's a really coming inward, a coming together, and kind of closing down what's happening outdoors as we come inside. It's a really a very special transition point.
Yeah, I think as I'm listening to you say, it really touches on your values. I think for me also, it touches on my values. This place that we live has such a presence to it. It helps me to feel present, and people are more present when they're here.
Mm-hmm.
And that appreciation for the place and the beauty and, our ability to be present within ourselves because we're here is really special.
Yeah. So that's what Thanksgiving is for us. And we just are grateful you are joining us here on this day that's so meaningful for us. So
today we're talking about gratitude, yeah?
Yeah. So today, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about the physiology of gratitude and the effects that it has on our body, mind, spirit when we do gratitude practices. And there's been a lot of books written and a lot of podcasts and articles written about these things. So we're grateful that you're taking an opportunity to be here with us at the Somatic Coaching Academy and be a part of the conversation of how we think about these things and how we look at these things.
I think gratitude's one of those things that's gotten quite a bit of press because it really does hold its weight, to the benefits that we can derive from gratitude. It's also tough for people to feel gratitude. Sometimes it can be this kind of aspirational quality to it, which of course aligns with coaching to have this aspirational quality. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, but let's go ahead and dive into some of the
physiology of gratitude. Yeah. So there's been a lot of research around gratitude. So I just actually have some of the statement results of some research that I'd like to read to you from the Greater Good Institute, looking and measuring people in fMRIs and functional MRIs of where blood flow goes in the brain and that sort of thing around gratitude experiences. And so I just want to kind of kick us off with this statement. The report reads that we found that across the participants, when people felt more grateful, their brain activity was distinct from the brain activity related to guilt and the desire to help a cause. Interesting, right? So in other words, your brain activity is different when you're experiencing guilt as compared to when you experience gratitude. Okay, so they go on to say, more specifically, we found that when people who are generally more grateful gave more money to a cause, they showed greater neural sensitivity in the medial prefrontal cortex, a brain area associated with learning and decision making. This suggests that people who are more grateful are also more attentive to how they express gratitude.
So gratitude begets gratitude.
Yeah. And we're more mindful of how we express gratitude. So when we experience or when we're feeling more grateful, we become more mindful of how to express gratitude further.
I like that because then our uniqueness and our authenticity kind of shine.
Yeah.
In terms of making decisions about how we'd like to express ourselves.
Yeah. Because if we have that blood flow and that medial prefrontal cortex, again, that's the part of our brain that has to do with decision making. And so we can make a decision to practice gratitude when we are conditioned and trained. We train ourselves to experience more gratitude.
That's kind of interesting. And maybe you're going to talk about this, but we talk about how when we're stressed, that prefrontal cortex is offline. So it would make sense, I think, that if we are practicing stress a lot in our lives, that perhaps we actually don't have, as much access to, or as we're just not building the muscle quite as much for gratitude.
Yeah, the neural network isn't as robust, right? Yeah. For gratitude. So yeah, so we're actually going to talk about that a little bit. So they go on to say that most interestingly, when we compared those who wrote the gratitude letters, that was a part of what they did in this study, was wrote gratitude letters. Those who wrote the gratitude letters with those who didn't, the gratitude letter writers showed greater activation in the medial prefrontal cortex when they experienced gratitude in the fMRI scanner. This is striking, as this effect was found 3 months after letter writing began.
Wow. That's cool.
This indicates that simply expressing gratitude may have a lasting effects on the brain. While not conclusive, this finding suggests that practicing gratitude may help train the brain to be more sensitive to the experience of gratitude down the line. And this could contribute to improved mental health over time.
That's really cool that the results were extended. It wasn't just right in the moment.
Yeah. So when we practice gratitude, it helps us become more sensitive to practicing gratitude again in the future, which I know is something you wanted to talk about, Ani, that sometimes gratitude isn't easy to feel.
Yeah, it's not easy to access. And we see all over, social media and out there in the media that practice gratitude. It's important to practice gratitude. It's like taking your multivitamins now. We know it sometimes feels like a should.
Yes.
And then when our nervous system isn't conditioned to feel good anyway, when we don't have those neural pathways to be able to feel good, and like we were talking about, when we're stressed a lot and we don't have access to those parts of our brain, we can start to feel bad about ourselves because we know that we should be taking our vitamins. We know that we should be practicing gratitude, and either we can't get ourselves to do it, or we forget about it, or we don't really feel it when we're doing it. And so it can be this added reason to beat ourselves up about it, think we're less than, or confirm our lack of ability and worthiness.
Yeah. With some of the people I've worked with, and certainly with myself too, and I think the research is starting to kind of show this out, is that, speaking to what you're talking about, Ani, that when we practice gratitude regularly, we build new neural networks. That just happens. And I've got a whole other bunch of results physiologically that happens when you do gratitude practices that we're going to talk about in a minute. But when we do these things regularly, we're building new neural networks. And now this is a little bit different for everybody. But at some point in time, if you practice regularly enough, what I guarantee will happen is you'll kind of reach like a tipping point, a threshold tipping point, where your resting state becomes being grateful.
Agree.
And
Yeah.
again, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And so there's no judgment. And so what we want to do is step back from using the law of relativity against ourselves here, of saying, well, I needed to do it for 2 years. Someone else just needed to do it for 2 weeks. I must be broken. Right? We're going to step back from that. Let's use the law of relativity to actually support ourselves by comparing ourselves to a past version that at this point in time, we feel better now about ourselves than we did back then. And we have a past podcast on law of relativity you can look back to get more details about what that exactly entails. But if you just keep at it, if you just find simple ways, simple gratitude practices that, again, we're going to pitch a couple out there, some of our favorite ones to you that you can think about doing. At some point in time, you'll build enough neural network where it just becomes like a resting state of gratitude. And then your reflex to challenges rather than reflexing to complaining, you reflex to gratitude. And that can happen just with consistency of practice.
So what I'm hearing you say, it's a worthy practice, and it's going to take time. For each of us, different amounts of time, and there really is true transformational change that can happen on the other side of it. It's sustainable.
Yeah, but we also want to point out too, on the way to that tipping point, you're having benefits also.
Yeah.
It's not like you're not having benefits until you get to that tipping point.
Oh, until you're enlightened, sitting
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
mountaintop.
exactly. So you're getting benefits from the first day you do a gratitude practice, you get a benefit from it. Now you might not feel it acutely,
Right. So you kind
right?
of have to, you might need to believe it's true,
Yeah,
or
right.
start to gather evidence that it's true.
Correct. But you have to just kind of stay on it, stay on that gratitude practice. I mean, the research is very, very clear about that, how beneficial it is to do gratitude practices on our physiology, knowing that it might be difficult to feel that right away for people. And the reason it's difficult to feel that is simply because likely you've been conditioned to look with a greater degree of negativity bias, which, by the way, we're all conditioned with negativity bias.
Absolutely.
Some of us have been taught to buy into the negativity bias more than others.
Yeah, and we live in societies where we spend a bunch of time in our heads. A lot of people are totally disconnected from our bodies. Even those of us who take time to connect with our bodies know that we're not connected to our bodies all the time. And so it makes perfect sense, actually, that we would need to pay attention. It's going to be subtle and nuanced, and notice and get those little nuggets. And, we call them pieces of driftwood.
Yeah.
Um, and then it'll be able to grow and grow from there.
Yeah.
And so, I'm reminded about the thing that we teach our students about, like, taking a moment and recognizing where in your body you feel something. So as you're doing your gratitude practice, actually tapping in with your body and taking a moment to be mindful around what that feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's tap into a little bit of the physiological benefits as a segue, kind of into and out of kind of what you're talking about there, Ani. So one of the neurohormonal effects of practicing gratitude is you have an enhancement and an increase of your dopamine and serotonin in your body. So we've done podcasts on dopamine and motivation. Go back and check those out as well. But just in short, dopamine is the reward chemical. So it helps you feel more motivated and helps you feel like you got a reward. Now, serotonin is the satiety neurohormone. It helps us feel satisfied. So when we practice gratitude regularly, we enhance our dopamine and our serotonin levels, which helps us to feel both good and rewarded, but also satisfied.
And that serotonin probably helps with the effect that you were talking about, where it's prolonged.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're getting a real neurohormonal changes when you do gratitude practices. But the other thing that happens too in the research is that people have decreased pain experiences as well. So we get a little bit of endorphins are actually a part of that also. So that when we practice gratitude, we actually have elevation of our endorphin levels. So one of the best treatments, if you will, for chronic pain conditions is practicing gratitude regularly. And that's a way to change our subjective experience of pain from a neuroendocrine level.
Inside out.
Yeah, from the inside out, really pretty cool. What else happens when we practice gratitude? Well, in the brain, it alters the function of the hippocampus and the amygdala
Mm.
as well. So, of course, the amygdala has a lot to do with our emotional regulation or dysregulation. So, when we're practicing gratitude, we're stabilizing amygdala function in order to help ourselves be more emotionally regulated. It's an important kind of aspect to think about. And also, the hippocampus has, of course, to do with memory retrieval and specific memory retrieval, or how we kind of create context of time spacing and that kind of stuff. So when we practice gratitude regularly, we have a better functioning of the limbic part of our brain, that really the unconscious or subconscious hub of our brain centers is in that area.
As you're talking about that, it reminds me that as we practice gratitude, we actually start to change the past, and the things that happened in the past actually have different
Yeah.
context and meaning because we're tapping into those brain areas, which is just a fascinating, wonderful thing that can happen from this kind of work.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Another interesting part of the brain that gets affected by gratitude practice is the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is our kind of like the brain's, our body, actually our body's carburetor. It runs the metabolism of the body. And you were pointing out and talking about stress, Ani. Well, one of the primary stress loops is what we call the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, that when we perceive threat, the hypothalamus like charges itself up and then sends some information to the pituitary gland, which sends some information down to the adrenal gland, and then we have a stress response, right? Adrenaline and cortisol get released. So the hypothalamus, when we practice gratitude regularly, it actually helps to regulate hypothalamic function. So it helps to regulate our metabolism. So it
Hmm.
keeps our metabolism at an even keel, right? Helps us be on cruise control. If we were a car driving, you can either put your foot to the floor and like accelerate your foot on the gas pedal when you're driving down the interstate, or you can like slam your foot on the brake. A regulated hypothalamus is like having your cruise control on.
Mm.
So it's just you have this nice kind of steady state of metabolism going on. So that happens when you do gratitude practices regularly.
But that sounds good to a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a result of that. Also, kind of harkening back to what you're talking about with stress too, Ani, it reduces cortisol levels. Like when we practice gratitude, and cortisol is the primary stress hormone, and when we have a lot of cortisol in the system for prolonged periods of time, that reduces our hippocampus function also, so memory, those sorts of things, but also our immune function drops when we have a lot of cortisol or extended stress responses. So gratitude practices have been shown to improve your immune response. So one of the best ways to not get sick on a regular basis or to protect your body from things like cancer and heart disease and inflammation are to have regular gratitude practices.
It's one of my favorite times to practice gratitude actually is when I'm sick, which happens very infrequently.
Mhm.
But when I am sick, I will sit or lay in bed or whatever I'm doing and take extra time to appreciate my body for how well it works, and to keep me to be able to fight this thing, and it's working good. I can tell because my immune system is working right now, and it's a much better frame of reference to be in when I don't feel well, to
Mhm.
be practicing gratitude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree 100%, 100%. And there's one more brain area that we already talked about too, but let's just go into a little bit more that is enhanced, like the function and the blood flow in that area is enhanced when you practice gratitude is again the medial prefrontal cortex. So that part of the brain, again, has a lot to do with, it has some effect over emotional regulation. So the stronger the medial prefrontal cortex is, the more likely we are to auto-regulate or consciously regulate rather our emotional responses. So that's kind of an important thing. But this is also the part of our brain that we use when reappraising, through reappraising guilt and shame and worry.
Hmm.
So when our medial prefrontal cortex isn't working as well, right, guilt and shame and worry just wreak havoc in our nervous system and in our mind, right? They just run out of control. But when we have a stronger medial prefrontal cortex, we have better capacity to reappraise the situations that are associated with guilt, shame, and worry. And so with regular gratitude practice, when something comes up that we might feel guilty about, we have the capacity to kind of separate ourselves from it and say, oh, wait, let me understand a little bit more about what's going on here. Let me look at it from a different context so that we're not embodying and holding on to these really destructive, physiologically destructive emotions of guilt and shame.
So I'm just thinking back to how it can be challenging to feel gratitude or to
Yeah.
hear that we, should do the gratitude practices, but can't get ourselves to do it. We don't remember, we can't feel it when we do, and why those things can happen, and to just keep going because we're rewiring our physiology, or we're rewiring our nervous
Yeah.
system, or
Hmm.
we're developing new capacities, working new muscles. And it's good to hear that kind of thing, because otherwise, sometimes we can think something's wrong with us, but it's actually our body is working perfectly.
Hmm.
We just want to change the patterns around the capacities that we've developed.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's our willingness and commitment, should I say, to just being consistent with the practices over time that create really amazing long-term changes in the nervous system, in your brain and your body, right? We talked about neuroendocrine, we talked about brain, and that all has an effect on our mental wellness at large, our likelihood to become anxious, our likelihood to become depressed, our likelihood to become unmotivated, like all those things that so many of us are working with in our lives and hoping to create something new in our lives. These gratitude practices and feeling grateful. So that's I think the key part, not just thinking grateful, that's important. It's feeling grateful and doing the somatic work and the somatic practices to actually create a felt state around gratitude is really what helps to create the changes fastest of all. Like if we're going to supercharge the rewiring of the nervous system and the neuroendocrine system, it's really about using the somatic felt sense capacities to create those changes.
Mm-hmm. It would make sense that we involve our bodies, because it's really something we want to
Mm-hmm.
embody. So it's not just about making a list. Do you have some practices that you
Yeah,
want
so
to
let's kind of talk about our
talk about?
favorite gratitude practices.
Yeah, because as we're talking about this, I'm recognizing, some of the things I've heard out there in terms of how to practice gratitude. They generally come back to write things down.
Yeah, a lot of the
Um,
research, I think because they can then objectively
sure.
look at it, are things like gratitude journals.
Yeah, there's a bunch of gratitude apps,
Mhm.
or actually apps that cue you on some kind of gratitude prompt.
Yep.
They usually involves kind of writing stuff down. So maybe you're going to say that, but what
Well,
you feel like, or
those are those are popular ones that a lot of people do. Those aren't my go-tos. I'm not a journaler. I don't sit and journal and write. And I know some people do. And if you do, then heck, add some gratitude practices into your journals. That has been shown to be a very powerful way to
yeah,
get the effects. Absolutely do that. That just doesn't happen to be the way that I operate or function. One of my absolute favorite ways is to practice gratitude is have a gratitude buddy,
100%
right?
agree.
So I have somebody that I text with every day, and we send a gratitude back and forth every day. And so
Why do you think that's important?
well, for me, it feels like something I can do pretty easily.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, it's a commitment for me to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm accountable to somebody else. And I think it's also really amazing to be able to be vulnerable and share what you're grateful for somebody and have that be seen and witnessed by somebody else. And then also witness someone else's gratitude, even if you're grateful for a struggle or you're grateful for a big win in your life. There's no rules around what you're grateful for. It's like, hey, what I feel grateful for, I feel grateful for. And that's been hugely helpful for me in my life, hugely beneficial for me to actually have that exchange back and forth because the accountability helps me do it. Right. I guess I am writing it. I'm texting it
Yeah,
in a way.
sure.
But it's also being witnessed by somebody else and I'm witnessing someone else's gratitude. So for me, that's been really instrumental in
I
my
have to
life.
echo you 100%. It's one of the things when I work with clients and they want to develop gratitude practices. I think it's one that sticks the most. It's one that people appreciate the most. And like you said, I think a big part of that is the being seen and witnessed and seeing the other person and that connection and capacity between people. The accountability is awesome. And it's usually really easy to pull off. You can
Yeah.
think of somebody who and reach out and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Would you like to do it with me?"
Yeah.
And it does not have to take a lot of time. So I have to agree with
Yeah.
you
It's a
that I
great one.
think that is just awesome.
Yeah. That's a good one. What's one of your favorite ones?
I was going to say that
Yeah.
actually. So I'll say the other one I was thinking of is in terms of feeling gratitude. When I am expressing gratitude or when I am in gratitude for whatever it is, the trees are changing color and it's beautiful
Mm.
outside, or somebody said something lovely, or whatever I'm experiencing a connection, whatever it is, to notice where I feel that in my body and pause, and I call it savoring.
Yeah.
And it's an experience that I like to metaphorically. It's like the tea bag in my tea. It just sits there and steeps. And so to take a moment and just widen the moment where I pay attention and I savor that moment, and what it feels like. I'll be honest with you, sometimes something else comes up that's not like that quintessential yummy feeling, and I'll still sit and savor that, because guilt's a big thing that I deal with in my life that comes up whenever I want to change something, or like because it's Tuesday. Um, so, perhaps when I recognize that I'm really grateful for something in my life, I will feel a little guilty. I'll feel a little guilt come up, and I'll do the same thing. I'll just sit and savor that as well. I learned that from somewhere. It was a part of a connection for me and my learning, and it was on, for a purpose when wherever I
Mhm.
learned it from, and I'm alive and I can feel guilt. And so that's something to be grateful for too.
Yeah, yeah. I love the savoring pause, like the
Yeah.
pause and savor. That's like really powerful. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really great. Really great. I have another one too that for me brings a sense of embodiment is when I go to bed at night. So when I lay down in bed, I put one hand on my heart, one hand on my lower dantian, and I just sense myself sinking into the pillows, and I just say thank you over and over and over again. And I just bring a sense of thank you, thank you. Thank you. And it's thank you is kind of my mantra
Uh-huh.
at night as I'm falling asleep,
Oh,
as I sense into my body.
yeah.
And when I'm even if I'm feeling tight in my body in places and tense in my body in my places, I'm just thanking my body, and I'm thanking the experience of being in a comfortable bed and being able to let go of the day and all those things. And even if my mind's racing, I just come back to this thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's so helpful to get me to sleep, but I also then drift off into sleep in a state of thankfulness.
The smile on your face. It
It's,
reminds me of the I'm probably gonna say it wrong, the Hoponopono Ono
yeah,
prayer. You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about,
yeah,
right? Thank you. I'm sorry. You're welcome. I'm
yeah.
not saying it right.
I don't remember it. So
But yeah, that's a similar thing where you bring up the different words
mhm.
that like I love you, thank you, you're welcome, I'm sorry. And breathe. And there's been research about that specific prayer. It's really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. So it's bringing a sense of embodiment. So that's how I mean, I do some other gratitude practices also. I mean, just
Yeah,
moving and moving
sure.
around and being thankful. We do in our one of our advanced core centering graduate trainings, we spend some time doing some gratitude practices with our organs specifically. So
That's good. I like that.
you do a
Yeah.
organ gratitude practice. So there's other practices that we do with our core centering practices, which are kind of cool. But the one I do every single night before I go to bed is that embodiment practice where I'm just sensing into my body and just kind of scanning and saying thank you, thank you, thank you as we
Yeah.
go through. And that's been hugely transformative for me.
I don't think either one of us do this one all the time now, but teaching our students, I really like it in our level 1 program, the Somatic Practice Essentials program, doing the wandering smile meditation.
Yes, yeah.
Never ceases to amaze me how much people love that, and they go and practice that, and really really enjoy it. So it's
hmm
another
Yeah, right.
great one.
That's another great one. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we kind of try to weave these things into everything we do so that if you're doing some of the practices that we teach here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, you've got gratitude kind of baked into them
Yeah.
as we go along.
Yeah. Speaking of gratitude, we're really grateful that you listen to the podcast and give us an opportunity to sit here and have a really good time, and educate and feel really on purpose, and do meaningful work that matters. We love that you cue in on Thursdays in our Slack channel for our community. On I love it every week. Leela, our student support person, posts it's everybody's favorite day. It's podcast day, and she'll put the mind blown emoji, and then people will put their insights in and stuff. So Leela, we're grateful for
Yeah.
you.
And of course, Leela also cues us on Gratitude Tuesday. Like
That's
every
right.
Tuesday in the group,
Tuesday.
we do a gratitude share in the
Yeah.
group on Tuesdays.
Yeah, we do. We
Yep.
do. We do a lot of gratitude practice, actually. So we are grateful that you're a part of the Somatic Coaching Academy in whatever part that you play, even if you're just pulling us out of your pocket on Thursdays and listening for 20 minutes. That's amazing. If you're in the Slack channel commenting on the Gratitude Tuesday post and all that stuff, that's awesome too. So thank you for being a part of our lives and for playing along and listening along with us.
Yeah. So as we enter into the holiday season, wherever you are in the world, I hope that you can find a way that this was helpful to think about carrying gratitude through the whole holiday season to help yourself be healthy and robust and present and connected to the people that you care most about.
All the things that matter to you.
Yep. So
Thanks for listening.
thanks so much. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.